Some days you can't win no matter what you do or say. These are the days you wish you had pulled a sheet over your head and stayed out of the house. Being the head of the house, according to your better half, means you have a certain responsibility that you sometimes wish you had. Mine started the moment I was awakened by the police department at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning and told that my bar had been broken into. I quickly got dressed and sprinted out the door, ready to jump in my Ford, but discovered I had a flat tire. It didn't help that I had only gotten about 4 hours of sleep. In a hurry, I grabbed my wife's company car since it was Saturday and hit the road. Unfortunately for me, since the cash was locked in the safe, they had taken most of the bar's liquor supply. One of the officers said someone had gotten themselves a huge new stock of top-grade bootleggers. They damaged the front entrance by driving their car through it. My rough estimate is that it should be at least 2 weeks before it opens. The police wrote it up as a robbery. After the insurance agent came and took pictures, I boarded up the house. Now I had to wait for the insurance agent to start repairing the main entrance. Fortunately, the retail losses to my business would be covered by insurance until I could reopen. It was around lunchtime, and I was getting ready to climb into my wife's car to go home when I heard a voice yelling, "Melody, wait!" I turned in the direction the male voice was coming from, causing the man running toward me to freeze in place. When I looked at him, he muttered, "Oops, sorry, I got the wrong car," and quickly walked away. Back home, I described the man in detail to my wife Melody, but she didn't seem to guess who he might be. Melody asked me the reason I was in such a hurry early this morning that I had to take her car. I replied that the bar had been broken into and the police had called me to the scene. After a quick bite of a sandwich, I changed the tire on my truck and went to fix it. It turned out to be a burst valve stem. Before heading home, I stopped along the way to pick up 2 new pairs of blue jeans, a package of Hanes t-shirts, and a MAGA hat. When I returned, I found a note from Melody saying she had gone shopping. I used to work on Friday and Saturday evenings because that was when we had the most work. This meant that by the time I got home, it was already morning. I shaved off my beard for the first time in 12 years, after which I showered and got ready to hit the road as usual. Except I didn't brush my hair. Their natural curls ended up strewn everywhere. As a result, I had changed my appearance so much that I almost didn't recognize myself. I was going to make the most of the night and check out the other establishments in town. I headed out at my usual time, as if nothing had changed, since Melody still hadn't returned. Entering the bar through the back door, I grabbed my new clothes and changed into them. I picked up an old pair of reading glasses that one of my coworkers had left behind to complete my new look. Clean-shaven, I looked much younger. With black-rimmed glasses, I could pass for a university dork. Then it dawned on me that everyone knew my truck, so I called a cab to pick me up and take me to National Car Rental. I chose a white, unassuming, medium-sized Ford. I started on the north side of town, working my way south. Walking into a restaurant and ordering a beer, I observed how well-trained the staff was, studied the location, decor, customers, and prices. I was learning a lot of little things that might come in handy in my own business when I reopened the establishment. After getting the information I needed, I quite often walked away, leaving behind a full mug of beer. It was at the 7th establishment, located along the Mississippi River in a poor part of town where university students hung out, that I discovered something that changed my whole world. I had just walked through the front doors of the New City Jack when I saw her. My wife Melody was on the dance floor with a man who was not me. For a slow dance, they seemed to be dancing pretty damn tight. My first inclination was to do some serious physical damage to his face, because this was the same man who ran up to me during lunch calling her by name. This clearly indicated that my loving wife was lying to me. Melody was wearing a tight outfit like I had never seen before. The blouse was half unbuttoned and everyone could see her full cleavage. Being a bartender, I knew that appearances can be deceiving. I started looking for a seat to observe her when a guy shouted to me over the loud music, "There's room here if you agree to buy a table." He was surprised that I took him up on his offer and asked the waitress to bring me a double gin and tonic. I found out it was a group of regulars. I said I was just passing through and stopped for the night. I asked if they were always this busy. On weekends, yes, because of the university students. As the evening progressed, I casually inquired who the lady was, dressed in matching white, almost see-through pants and a low-cut blouse. I was asked why I was interested in this. I said that she seemed to flaunt her sexuality a lot, as if she was looking for someone new. "She does that a lot," was the reply. "Melody Corbett is her name, and this is her boss, Payne Richards." I asked what's their history. "Are they friends with benefits?" The general consensus is that he's single and she's complicated, but they're regulars here and have been known to be together all the time. The red-headed girl sitting across from me said they come here every Friday and Saturday night since her husband works out of town. The only thing I found out beyond that was when one of the other girls at the table said that they always come in her car. Before the band started their last set, I thanked the table for letting me join them. I treated one of them to another round and said goodnight. Slipping outside, I quickly found her car and was already deflating all of her tires when I was caught by a pretty red-headed girl sitting at the table. "You didn't know, did you, Caleb?" the redhead said. "My name is Carrie Ann, by the way, and I work with them." "Everyone at this table does too." "How did you know who I was?" I asked. "I didn't. I could just see by the look on your face that you had been holding back your ardor all night. Even though you tried not to, your eyes followed her too often. It wasn't until I saw you let the air out of her tires that everything fell into place. The questions you asked earlier made me wonder what the first thing I would do if I were her husband who had just found out about this," said Carrie. "So here I am to find out if I'm right. You don't work on oil rigs, do you? Maybe when you're done we should talk. It's only fair that the white Ford Tarsus in the corner labeled rental is the car I use. The Baitia Street bar is closed because it was trashed this morning," I said. "Melody thinks I still work there. I used this night to check out the competition, and I've been going around to different bars all night checking them out. Here are the keys. Get in it. I really don't want you on my radar in case someone else catches me. You work at Baitia's on Baitia. This place has a great reputation," she replied, taking her keys and walking away. As soon as I was done, I joined her. Carrie was sitting in the driver's seat starting the car. I was lucky no one else was out. "Where do you want to go?" asked Carrie. "Any place where we won't be disturbed or overheard," I replied. "This is my apartment. Besides, I needed a ride home," Carrie said with a smile. It was a 20-minute drive to her modular home outside of town. I was surprised to see a car in the driveway. "That's my car, Susan. The brunette who was sitting with us picked me up and we drove together. It's easier to brush off unwanted attention if you say you came with a friend," she said. I texted her and told her I'd taken a cab home. It was a beautiful house that looked like it was new because it looked like it had hardly been used. She got us each a couple of beers and we started talking. "Carrie Ann, thanks for catching me." "I don't know what else I would have done if I had stayed," I said. "You made me realize that I may have been overreacting." "You weren't Payne. He has a monthly standing room at the Ramada Inn on 4th. If you follow them, you'll find the two of them going there right after closing time," Carrie Ann explained. "She comes in with a shopping bag wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, and when she goes out with him, she's wearing dressy clothes. After they return, about 2 or 3 hours later, she leaves, freshly washed, in the same blue jeans and with the same shopping bag in hand." "How do you know all this?" I asked. "My brother is one of the night managers. He works Wednesday through Sunday. According to him, they've been lovers for over a year," Carrie said. "It was Melody who told him that you work on the oil rigs and can be away for up to 6 months at a time. As a result, he has the impression that you are a married couple who have an open relationship." She must have seen the shock on my face because she said, "Oh shit, you have no idea about anything at all." "No, I didn't." "The first problem is how I'm going to get proof," I said. "The second is that her parents are backing my bar. I still owe them about $20,000. Let me talk to my brother and see what can be done on his end. They might have a videotape of her going in and out of the room. She could also get her own key card for his room," suggested Carrie. "I'll see him at our parents' house next Friday afternoon because it's my parents' anniversary." We exchanged contact information before I left. I wanted to see what happened when they discovered she had a flat tire. It would help me decide if what Carrie had told me was true. I got back to the bar just before closing time, glad that there was plenty of light in the parking lot before the bar shut it down. It was a few minutes before Melody and Payne walked out of the building, holding hands and furtively kissing as they walked to her car. I noticed that he pulled his keys out of his pocket to unlock the passenger door for her. That's when they noticed the flat tire. As they approached the trunk, he noticed a second one. Melody ran around the other side of the car, discovering that all the tires were flat. I wasn't close enough to hear what they were saying, but I saw enough to know that they were acting like a married couple would in this situation. It said a lot about how long their relationship had lasted. It wasn't just a flash in the pants. He pulled out his cell phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a tow truck with an air generator showed up and inflated the tires. I watched them as he drove them back to the Ramada Inn on 4th. Just as Carrie explained that when I was supposed to get home, Melody came out with still damp hair, dressed in blue jeans, carrying a large shopping bag from Macy's. It's hard for a man to realize that a woman who swore in her marriage vows to love only him has willingly and eagerly become another man's whore. I know I just learned this firsthand. I headed back to return the car. They called me a cab so I could pick up my truck. It was already 5 in the morning when I got back to my driveway. I fell asleep on the couch in the downstairs family room, dressed the same way I had been when I left for work. The next day, she didn't even realize her secret was out. Mel and I met when I was talked into helping a buddy out by being sent on a last-minute double date. Mel's family was visiting cousins, and he couldn't go on the date without her coming with him. As soon as I saw her with her shoulder-length black hair that seemed to draw you in with her blue eyes, I was interested. You could tell she had Betty Davis eyes because when she looked at you, it seemed like she was looking right into your soul. I was soon blown away. Even without makeup, because her father, a strict man, wouldn't allow it, she won me over. I ended up going to see her every weekend for 2 hours until I graduated against my old man's wishes. I guess you could say my persistence wore him down. She went to college and I didn't. I worked and took business courses online. In her sophomore year, she got an engagement ring. The next summer, the bar went up for sale. Her father and I stopped by for a couple of visits after his Craftsman made of wood were delivered. I mentioned that whoever bought it would have to gut it. It was too dark and old. He said exactly what was needed, and I spent an hour explaining to him what was needed and why. He ended up lending me money from his retirement fund at 6% interest and even helped me gut the house. I detailed the new design. We built it together, saving major labor costs. In 10 years of owning the house, I had reduced the loan amount from $200,000 to just under $20,000. It was now worth twice that. For a man like him, keeping his word was very important. At that point, Melody's parents insisted that we start a family. I was more than ready, but she wasn't. Now I understood why Melody wasn't ready. In her eyes, from what I could see, I wasn't good enough to be the father of her children. I went to the bank on Monday, applied for a commercial loan, and got an overdraft. The bank agreed to this if I paid off my father-in-law. By Wednesday, everything was ready. When I handed Melody's father the last payment, he handed it back to me signed, "If you recall, you gave me the rights to the design of the bar you created, but not the name." My retiree sold the plans 6 times, and as a result, I more than doubled my initial investment in you. He then wrote out a letter stating that the final mortgage payment received was paid in full. The next day, I went back to the bank and paid off the loan, leaving only an unsecured overdraft. The repairs and some changes I had in mind were progressing on my bar, but my wife, with her head up her ass, still had no idea what was going on. It was becoming obvious to me that she was oblivious to what was right in front of her, including me, as her thoughts were preoccupied with other things. Friday night, I arrived at my wife and her lover's favorite place, disguised as I had been the week before. Using Ami du Chambertin, a cheese from France, I plugged the exhaust pipe in her squad car, shoving it so it couldn't be seen unless you looked directly into it. Its pungent odor was worse than a huge hog yard. It grew worse as it fermented due to the heat. Before going into their favorite bar, I found his company car parked outside the hotel, and after pouring a 2-pound bag of sugar into the gas tank, I removed the valves from the stems. Soon I was sitting with their coworkers again and watching them continue to flaunt their sexual relationship. They were so engrossed in each other that they paid no attention to anything or anyone around them. At times, they got so heated that just watching them made people hot. Carrie Ann tried to stay close to me. She even refused all requests to dance. At times, when she saw me tense up, Carrie would take my hand, urging me to stay calm. I slipped the bartender a $100 bill with my email address written on it to get his attention, and, wearing my disguise, walked past the bar to the men's room. As I was returning to my seat, he asked me to explain. I told him that the best video clip sent to this email account of Melody and Payne by the end of the month would earn him and the announced winner $500 cash each. The only rule is that if they can't find out about it, otherwise the contest is canceled. He asked why I wanted to do this. I pulled out my wallet and said it's for your eyes only. He looked at my ID. Smiling broadly, he nodded his head. "This is going to be fun," he said. I'm married and I'd love to help you burn that cheating bitch. He invited me to come closer so I could whisper. I know how to get some Spanish fly, he said. I think next weekend Saturday we'll have a special unlicensed after-hours party. I replied, that would be perfect since the bar will reopen next Thursday. Spanx was a clear liquid prescription drug that made people extremely horny. Depending on the dose, its effects lasted from 12 to 24 hours. If it was used on oneself, it was a very stormy night. Doctors often prescribed it to couples who were having trouble getting pregnant. I was at home pretending to be asleep when at 3 in the morning, Melody crept in quietly, like a mouse. I could hear her talking to someone on the phone for a long time. Finally, she crawled into the room next to me. That Saturday morning, I got up earlier than she did. Since she didn't have a lock on her cell phone, I went through her phone records. She had talked to Payne after she found out I was home. She had also forgotten to erase her messages. One that interested me was addressed to her older sister. It read, Sis, I need a cover for last night. I'm going to tell Caleb I was with you last night. Using my cell phone, I took a picture. Of course, I later got the explanation that she had gone to visit her sister and brother. The following Tuesday, Carrie Ann Lasher texted me, Can we meet? I replied, At the truck stop by the highway. I'll be there in half an hour. She replied that she would see me there. Carrie Ann was waiting for me when I arrived. I don't think I've ever seen a nicer smile in my life. I was starting to grow a mustache and a goatee. She took a picture of me on her cell phone so she would have my image for her contact information. Carrie remarked that she liked the way I looked on it. Unfortunately, Melody still hadn't noticed the change in my appearance. Hi, Red, I said, sitting down. You look really happy. I'm Caleb, she replied. You will be too when you study the information my brother gave me this morning. The only problem is that he wants you to cover his printing and copying costs. The owners were charging him 20 cents a sheet if he printed anything for personal use. The waitress came over, and I ordered a big breakfast for the day. 3 eggs, 3 slices of toast with sausage and bacon. Carrie ordered a cheese omelet. We both ordered orange juice and coffee. The information revealed that Melody had had her own keycard to his room for over 6 months. He copied it every time it was used. Throughout that time, he had been using the card regularly 4 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 in the evening. I showed Carrie the image I had received of my wife's message to her sister. And what are you going to do about it? Asked Carrie. Are you going to get a divorce? There's a special party next Saturday for Melody and Payne. I hope they send me a bunch of videotapes because it's going to be wild. Once I have them, I'll take all the information I have and show it to her father to explain why she doesn't want my kids. At the same time, she will be served with a divorce petition in their hotel room. I've made sure that this will be videotaped as well. When you put the package together, email it to me, please, Carrie asked. Why? I asked. Payne's corporate car is out of commission and is a complete write-off, Carrie said. There is such a foul odor coming from Carrie's car that they may be forced to do the same to it. I'd like to suggest to our corporation that an angry husband may be to blame. When do you want it shipped? I asked, trying to hide my glee. How does it sound that she's being serviced at the same time? Carrie giggled. And may I use your name? I lost it. Released with a rumble of laughter. Damn, you can be a real asshole. Carrie laughed. Damn, I just realized you did. Are you going to tell me how and when? I did it perfectly, I said with a wink. I'm a gentleman and I'll never tell. We ordered medication through our doctor. I called a friend after getting a picture of her birth control pills and ordered a year's supply of sugar pills that mimicked the ones she was taking. He, because he was a pharmacist, was able to duplicate everything, including the labeling. On Wednesday, I had them on hand. Before she got home from work, I had already switched them. Now all I had to do was buy time. Bad luck helped me the other night when an idiot ran a red light on the way to work and hit me so hard in the side that he drove into cars standing at the light. My truck was totaled. They had to cut me out with the jaws of life. An ambulance took me to the hospital to be checked out. My wife Melody and her parents met me. After 6 hours of examination, I was finally released. The doctors told me to hold out for at least 2 days before returning to normal activities. No driving for a week, he said, to give your broken bones time to heal. After that, a month of light duty. That meant Melody stayed home, looking after me after work. By Saturday, she was starting to worry. I smiled, knowing she had been off the pill for 3 days. I said I was done resting. I abruptly asked if she could drive me to the bar and pick me up when I called her after closing time. She readily agreed. While I was showering and getting dressed, I heard her talking on her cell phone, making arrangements for a night out. She dropped me off. I told my staff that I wasn't working, but just wanted to spend the night to see if the changes I had implemented were working. The cook I hired was great. Our sales before the concert doubled, and for a Saturday, that says a lot. The place was sold out. From the moment we opened, we started attracting lunch customers because of the daily specials we were promoting. Its food complemented the bar's theme. Every night, the restaurant closed at 8 o'clock. After that, you could always get pickled eggs or sausages. He was an elderly gentleman who wanted to get home early in the evening. His problem was that he had retired too early, and staying home with his wife was driving him crazy. When he first suggested it to me, I brushed it off until I checked out other bars. He ordered the food, set the prices, and told me that in addition to his salary, I would have to pay him 10% of the gross profit. We worked together to set things up. We set up what he called his cramped little kitchen the way he wanted it. Everything he cooked was made from scratch. Shepherd's pie and Irish stew were automatically popular, but he had his own twist that put it an order of magnitude above the others I tried. This forced our large bar stock in my office to go downhill. We had to hire new kitchen staff that he hand-selected. So far, the reviews have been top-notch. It was about 8:30 in the evening when I saw her walk in with her friend Susan. Carrie Ann Lazar looked amazing. As soon as she saw me, a big smile appeared on her face. At 9 o'clock at night, we had a 3-piece band that started playing light folk songs and a few Irish standards. On a good night, the dance floor was half full. They sat at a table for 8 people. Carrie Ann was dressed in Irish colors. Her blouse and pleated skirt complemented each other perfectly. Seeing a natural red-headed woman in green was amazing. One of my waitresses said she was an attention getter. I had to agree, as I had a couple of specialty drinks prepared for them. I held them up to them myself, saying, "Compliments of the house." "Caleb," Carrie Ann said as if it was important. "You remembered what we like, thank you. Caleb is my dear friend Susan." I extended my hand in a friendly way and Susan took it. Then she said she'd be right back. I went behind the bar and got myself a large glass of ginger ale. I promised myself that I would never drink in my own bar. I had kept that promise for 10 years and I wasn't about to start now. With that glass, I walked back to the table and sat down across from Carrie Ann. Carrie stood up and sat down next to me. Susan didn't look surprised. "I'll take the seat early," Carrie Ann announced, "before the rest of the team arrives. Susan, Caleb is Melody's ex-husband." "You're not kidding, are you?" replied Susan in surprise. "No, it's not," I replied. "That first night you all met me, I was checking out what was on offer in town because this bar was closed for renovations. I was in complete shock when I was invited to sit at your table. Later, Carrie caught me doing something I shouldn't have done on the street. After I told her about my behavior, I ended up giving her a ride home. We've been friends ever since." "He had no idea what his wife was doing while he was here at work," explained Carrie Ann. "That's why we're here today. I wanted to make sure he wasn't alone." "But why Baisha on Baisha?" Susan said. "The place has a reputation as a high-class establishment." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment, although that wasn't my goal when designing the bar. I just wanted to have a nice enough place to bring my girlfriend." "Susan," Carrie said, "Caleb not only built this bar, he owns it." Carrie and I noticed Susan's surprised look. It wasn't long before the place began to fill up. When the rest of the team arrived, the table was filled to capacity. Carrie Ann and Susan kept me on the dance floor most of the night. My staff was glad that I was enjoying myself for once. It was noted that the dance floor had never been so full. I was surprised when everyone agreed that the volume of the orchestra was just right. It was loud enough that you could hear your thoughts. The staff noted that we had a larger crowd than usual for a Saturday night. After the bar closed for the night, I asked Carrie Ann to drive me home. She and Susan did so. That's when she told me that most of the crew agreed that this place was a much better place to hang out because it wasn't designed for the university singles crowd. I was pleased because word of mouth had just expanded my clientele. Waking up late Sunday morning after 8 hours of sleep, I discovered that Melody wasn't home. That didn't surprise me. I figured that if everything had gone according to plan, she wouldn't have made it back in time. I spent the next 2 hours being a very concerned husband. I spent time calling both sides of the family looking for her, while feigning concern as all calls from me to her went to voicemail. I called Carrie Ann and told her what was going on. She decided that my calling everyone was a smart decision on my part. While talking to her, I got another call. I told her I would call her back. It was my father-in-law. "Hi, Dad," I said. "I'm sorry I still haven't heard anything after talking to you this morning." "That's what I thought, Caleb. That's why I'm calling." Mary and I decided to come to the Ramada Inn on 4th for Sunday brunch. Now we wish we hadn't because we found Melody's car parked there. "I don't know what to tell you, Dad. I haven't had my truck replaced yet and I still can't drive. There's no way I can make it. So go enjoy your lunch and I'll talk to you later," I replied in a concerned tone. My father-in-law was a strict man who lived and died by his own standards and principles. In his opinion, there was too much gray in the world. Everything had to be black or white. He didn't want to watch Anderson Cooper because how could anyone take anything that Colobus said as truth? He couldn't understand that in our society, the basic truths he was raised on no longer existed. He was surprised that a man my age didn't have tattoos on his body. I replied that I have a lot of respect for myself, so I refused to follow the masses. Most of those who put tattoos on their body regret it later. Just because people chose to live their lives as they see fit did not make them right in my eyes. Our society has become so self-centered that we have stopped caring about our neighbors. One evening, we had a heated discussion about law and order and their decline. I said that people still look to our government as an example of how we should behave, and look what they do. One side says we should follow the law, the other side encourages breaking it. One promotes irresponsibility, the other demands responsibility. The word racist has been changed by one political party to mean that regardless of color, religion, or heritage, you are a racist if you do not promote and accept their views as if they were the gospel of Jesus Christ. If Hitler were alive, I added, he would claim that they are following the early years of his life's journey. In their eyes, you and I are but a minority to them and their followers who are too stupid to follow their doctrines. If you argue with them or oppose their wishes, you are branded a racist, harassed, and attacked. Now they show up in democratically controlled cities wearing masks, peddling their form of social justice against people like us. The only opinion they want to hear is their beliefs coming out of your mouth. Unfortunately, the leadership says the situation will be investigated and charges will be filed, but we both know that will never happen. Equal justice for all is a thing of the past. He agreed that the situation will get worse before it gets better. This is exactly what Hitler and his followers did before coming to power. We who study history to learn see our great country repeating history. It is sad that one party had to bring such a culture back to America and make it normal again. It was these same attitudes that led to the first Civil War in the United States of America. At times I had to wonder if we were headed for the second one. Dad, I finished, whether we like it or not, this is the reality of the world we live in now. The way he looked at things, if her father caught Melody with a lover, she'd be lucky to escape his wrath with her life. I wrote to him that this wasn't the first time she'd gone somewhere without my knowledge, and attached an image of her message to her sister. I called Carrie back to let her know what my father-in-law had discovered and what I had just done. She laughed, then asked what I was doing. I replied that other than smiling, it was nothing much. "Do you want me to pick you up so we can do something?" she asked. I honestly said I'd love to, but it's probably best not to disappear. They'll worry, and I think they have enough to worry about already. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was sitting in the kitchen eating a pizza that had been delivered to me when I heard a car pull up in the driveway. When I looked out the window, I saw that it was Melody's dad, and he was alone. I watched him get out of the car. He looked like a broken man. I went and let him in, then got a bottle of Marker's whiskey to pour us a nice stiff drink. Taking a clean plate, I told him to eat a slice of pizza. "Caleb, it's bad. I was at home when I called you. Your message got me thinking, and I went to talk to Mandy first because I wanted to make sure my thoughts were right," he said. I asked the day manager of the hotel to call the night manager early. I came back. It seems the affair with Melody had been going on for over 6 months. Mandy, her older sister, happened to find out about it herself and promised to keep it a secret because Melody explained that she wanted to experience the life of a wild single child before settling down and raising children. I pretended to be shocked, but partly I was because I didn't expect Mandy to be honest about it. I was about to leave when Melody came out of the elevator, holding his hand. He had a huge smile, like he was proud of his latest conquest. I passed out. The night manager and the day manager had to pull me away from him, he said. I came here because I think this will be the last place the cops will look for me. Dad, the first thing I'm going to do is call Mom to let her know you're okay, I said. Then I'm going to call the manager of the Ramada Inn to see if Melody's lover is going to press charges. My mother-in-law was devastated, but was grateful that her husband had come to see me. Melody called her to apologize. Her mother said, for what? For getting caught? For creating a situation that could land your father in jail? For having an affair? Or for what we found out? Your apology means nothing. What about Caleb? About your marriage? You're just hoping we can help you get out of the mess you made for yourself. Then she hung up. I told her if I heard anything else, I'd tell her thanks. I called Jason Lasher and introduced myself. I told him I still owed him $5. He laughed. Did my sister tell you that? I answered yes more than once. She never forgets anything, he said. So if you want, pay me to do it in front of her. I asked why. It will save us both a lot of heartache. She, like our mother, clings to everything like a dog to a bone. She needs to see that before she lets go. I laughed and said I could put up with it as long as I knew. Then he told me I think she has a crush on you. If you are not interested, let her go. I replied that I'm still married. Until I'm done with that, I'm not making any decisions about my life. I promise you, Jason, that I will be careful not to take her where I'm not ready to go myself. I then told him that my father-in-law was with me and I needed to know if the police had been called. He informed me that they hadn't, and that Melody had convinced Payne not to press charges, even though he wanted to at first. I said thank you, Jason. I told Dad the good news before I gave it to Mom. I could see the relief on his face. Caleb, what are you going to do about this mess? He asked anxiously. I pulled out my cell phone and prepared a message for Melody. I showed it to her father. It said, Dad just told me everything. Congratulations, you should feel proud. In just one day, you threw away parental guidance, ruined our marriage, and tore my soul apart. Don't be sad. Be happy. You got what you wanted. Don't come home. The Melody I knew doesn't live here anymore. If you send him to his father, my marriage will end right now. If not, it will die slowly for another 6 months. I said it quite sincerely. Once you break trust, you can never get it back. Let's give this dead marriage a quick, honorable death, he said, hitting the send button. Mary always said that Melody married her father. This just proves she was right. After we were done with pizza and drinks, we went to Lumberland and bought a set of 3-door deadbolt locks. As soon as we installed them, the whole family drove up to us. Mandy's mom, her husband Jack, and the adorable kittens. They ended up leaving around 10 o'clock. I texted Carrie Ann, "Are you awake?" She responded very quickly with a call. "Are you okay?" "I have to ask because Jason called and told me what happened," asked Carrie. Payne has 2 black eyes and a broken nose. Your father-in-law really jumped him, but he only managed 3 punches before Jason helped him stop. I laughed but replied, "He used to do amateur boxing when he was young." "I'd like to see that," said I. "He came here after everything happened. He didn't know where to go. I found out from your brother that there were no charges and I informed the family. They had all gathered here to discuss the mess and had already left." "What about Melody?" asked Carrie. I explained that my father-in-law had asked the same question. I explained that I had written Melody in a message. I asked him to read the message, to which he replied, "Let's give this noble the death penalty," and pressed send. Your father-in-law sent a message for you. That's unrealistic. Couldn't you have forgiven her and given her a second chance? Stated Carrie. No, in his eyes, she's broken trust. And there's no getting it back. He still sees everything as black or white. She made her bed and let her live in it. Damn the consequences. In this situation, I agree with him, stated I. He even helped me change the locks on the doors. Any word on what happened last night? Asked Carrie Ann. No, I haven't checked yet, been too busy. I laughed. I guess it doesn't matter anymore, though I'll keep my word. Give him until Monday night, Carrie replied. From what I've heard, it might surprise you. Why? I asked. Rumor has it that the bartender at New City Jack used to be in videos. You know the kind of videos. Carrie chuckled. If that's true, it wouldn't surprise me in the least that he didn't take advantage of the situation. Are you serious? I asked. Yes, it is. Carrie replied, What I want to know is when do I have an official first date, Caleb? How about the day Melody is served? I said with a smile. I'll even arrange for her to be served in the office. The deal was that you would send me red roses in advance that day. I want to be able to rub her nose in it because she's violating my notions of fidelity, Carrie said. It's going to be very interesting at work tomorrow. I hung up the phone and thought about what I knew about Carrie Ann. She was about 24, unmarried, and very good looking. About 5 feet 8 inches tall. While she couldn't be called overly slender, she wasn't thin. My grandfather, looking at her hips, would have said she was a good breeding animal. To him, that meant she would do a great job of making a life. She worked in the same regional office of the dental company as Melody and her lover, but she wasn't part of the management team. As far as I had learned, she was very selective about who she allowed into her life. She obviously had a close relationship with her family and inner circle to which she invited me. She liked to dance and drink, so she was sociable, just like me. Carrie had a great personality but was cautious. Because of this, I had more questions than answers. For example, she seemed more educated than the position she was working in. It gave the impression that something else was going on. Going to bed, I hummed, Hey, Carrie Ann, what's the game? Can anyone play? Knowing what I would be facing on Monday, I arranged for my assistant to take over the bar until I got my personal life sorted out. Mandy came over with Jack's truck to help me pack her sister's personal belongings. She stopped by the packing supplies store so we could do it right. We started with the master bedroom. While I laid out and taped up the boxes, she started going through the dresser drawers. Caleb, I can't believe what my sisters are doing. Mandy replied, I never approved of it and didn't say anything because I thought she would wise up. When my dad told me about your message, I broke down and told him the truth. I've only known about it for a month. He took it as a personal failure. In his opinion, it's his fault because he didn't raise her right. I think my mom feels the same way. Mandy, my emotions haven't gone away yet. The night Melody texted you, I found out about it. It happened by accident. I went to the bar to check out the competition. That's the only reason I took the picture. I was starting to build a case to confront her, I explained. I didn't expect it to turn out this way, and I'm really sorry. Damn, didn't you tell her that the bar had been broken into and that it was closed? She asked. Yes, it was, but in hindsight, I'd say she heard but didn't listen, I stated. I should have realized that this was her way of telling me that our marriage was dead. Melody was always protected by our father, as was I, Mandy says. I had to become a parent myself to appreciate the sacrifices he made. I try to instill that quality in my children. Melody, even when she was little, never recognized right and wrong. It has always been and will always be that way with her. I can't say I wish I'd seen it sooner. I think about your mom and dad too much, I said. Not many people can say their father-in-law is one of their best friends. When Mandy got to her sister's intimate parts, she asked for sewing scissors, which I quickly found. Before packing Melody's underwear, she cut out the crotch. The bras she cut between the cups. She must have been sending her sister a message. All the ruined items were thrown into a box. I was glad she did that because I couldn't. It took us about 4 hours to finish about half of the work. I asked her if she would let me take her out to lunch before we got back to work. She agreed and took me to a new Chinese restaurant called Yumi's, which was just a smorgasbord of food that she really wanted to try. I'll be honest, I was very impressed with its quality and food selection for the price. We got there just as the lunch crowd was dispersing and caught Payne on his way out. With 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and swollen lips, he looked rough. My father-in-law had done him well. My God, said Mandy in surprise. My father did that to him. It'll take 2 months for it to heal. An eyewitness told me that your father only hit him 3 times before they jumped up and stopped him, I said. From the looks of Payne, my dad still has a hell of a punch. Mandy looked at me in surprise. If they hadn't stopped him, would Payne be in the hospital? I don't know, I said, getting out of the car. As we approached the entrance to the restaurant, Payne came out from around the corner and said, "Mandy, please unblock Melody. She really needs to talk to you." "Payne, have you met my brother-in-law, Caleb?" she replied. I stepped forward. Payne's face turned dead white because he realized that I was the one driving Melody's car. He raised his fist as if preparing for a fight. "If that's the way you want it, Payne, that's fine. Mandy will confirm that he started the fight," I said. As soon as she said she would do it, I lifted my foot and kicked him hard in the balls. When he fell over in pain, I punched him twice with my fists. I punched him as fast and hard as I could, several times as hard as I could. When he completely collapsed, I kicked him as hard as I could and hit him in the balls again. To finish it off, I hit him hard on his right arm. I didn't realize it, but it gave me the release I needed. I opened the door for Mandy and we headed inside. We were escorted to our seats. I ordered an unsweetened tea and she ordered a Coke. "Before we go get food, I want to ask, did my daddy teach you those moves?" asked Mandy. I replied, "Not if you think it's part of my job to be a bouncer when necessary. That's why I asked you to witness that he started it. I didn't want a fair fight, I wanted to end it quickly." No sooner had Mandy and I filled our plates than my phone rang. It was Melody. She finally wanted to talk, but I didn't. Just pressed the red phone on the screen to disconnect the call. "I think her boyfriend already called her," I said. "Too bad he's not going to give her anything anytime soon." Mandy lost her composure and began to laugh uncontrollably. Everyone looked at her. I said out loud that I would never joke with her in public again. "God, that was funny." "I almost peed my pants," said Mandy. "I'm glad you didn't." I replied, "How would you have explained it to Jack?" I would have been tempted to yell flash flood. "Stop it," she said, starting to laugh again. After eating, we went back to work and kept at it until we were done. I packed up all those feminine things a woman adds to a house to make it her own. At 5 o'clock, we were unloading Jack's huge cargo van at the storage center at the place we had rented for him. I had to pay the security deposit and the first month's rent, but the owner agreed to keep the keys until she came to get them. I texted her to let her know what her sister and I had done. My insurer called about my truck with an offer from the guy who hit me. I knew it was low, so I told them I didn't want the money, but they should replace the truck with a commercially inspected vehicle with the same mileage or less. I did this because the insurance company will automatically find the cheapest option. That way it will cost them thousands to return the truck better than new. When we got back to my place, Carrie and Susan were already waiting for us. I introduced them to Mandy as her sister Melody's co-workers. I invited them all in. Mandy called Jack to let him know what was going on so he wouldn't worry. Now we were all sitting around drinking beer. "We just came by to see how you were doing," Carrie said, "and to see if you'd like to join us for dinner." "Several people had a bad day at work," Susan said. "Payne was actually in serious condition this morning and went to the hospital this afternoon. He never came back from lunch. Melody was looking for an apartment during lunch." "I wish I felt sorry for any of them," Mandy said. We spent the day moving Melody's things into storage. Caleb let me pack her underwear, which I handled so that all her future lovers would have easy access to it. I informed the corporation via email why there was a problem with Payne and Melody's corporate machines, Carrie Ann stated. I attached a nice picture of Payne's face, saying that's what happened when Melody's father caught them. I added that office romances were not allowed, let alone long-term affairs. "Do you hate my sister that much?" asked Mandy. "No, I hated her behavior." "I understand that you may feel that way because of what I did," Carrie said. "I grew up in a family where we were held accountable for our actions. If we did something good, we were praised. If we did something bad, we paid for it. I just think they got away with it for too long." I got a call from the bar, and I excused myself to take the call. Later that evening, Carrie told me about what I had missed. "Okay, Carrie Ann, how long have you been in love with Caleb?" asked Mandy seriously. "The first night I met him, when he discovered his wife's romantic interest, I watched him hold back his anger until he stopped." Carrie said, "Instead of confronting her in public, he went outside and let the air out of her tires. I caught him. I could see his pain even though he was trying to hide it. He told me to wait in his rental car because he didn't want me to get caught with him. He was ready to go down for his behavior, but he didn't want to take me with him. In that moment, I realized he was different. We talked that night. He didn't swear. He didn't humiliate her. He was just trying to figure out how to get evidence to gently explain to his father-in-law why Melody didn't want to have children with him. Caleb has always been special, Mandy explained. In his relationships with other people, he seems to be able to step into their shoes. In family problems, he has always acted as a peacemaker. He's hurting, but he won't admit it to anyone. You have my blessing, but if you hurt him, I will come after you. When your father caught Melody in pain and lost him, I was surprised to find out that he came here to be with Caleb, Carrie explained. Did you know that your father was the one who sent the text that ended their marriage forever? No, I didn't. Thanks for telling me, Mandy replied. That explains why my parents didn't discuss our attempt to save their relationship. I came out and said, Mandy, call Jack and the kids and tell them to meet us at the bar. I just started making shepherd's pie for all of us for dinner, including Susan and Carrie, so give me a minute to change. After cleaning myself up, I returned to find Mandy gone and Susan waiting in the car. Carrie had put the beer bottles away, tossing them in the trash, and was busy wiping down the table. Thank you for doing this, I said. You're welcome. I like your sister-in-law. I think we're going to be good friends, said Carrie. She thinks very highly of you, doesn't she? So does she, I replied. At that moment, Carrie moved toward me, wrapping her arms around me. She lifted her head toward me. I responded favorably, lowering my head toward her, sharing our first taste of what was to come. We walked out of the house, holding hands, and headed to the car. We both saw the smile on Susan's face. I'm sure she saw ours as well. Carrie climbed into the front passenger seat and I climbed into the back seat. It took you two quite a while, Susan said, to recognize your attraction. You both moved slower than molasses. We're taking small steps until we get this whole mess sorted out, Carrie said. You know very well that when and if I get married, I want to be a stay-at-home mom when I have kids, with a husband who thinks like I do. We all arrived at Bythea's house at the same time. Of course, Mandy and Jack's 2 children ran up, clinging to my legs. The little angels had spent the day with their maternal grandmother. I walked into the bar holding a little girl in each hand. Jack swung the doors open in front of me. I heard Mandy tell Carrie that I would make a great father. My daughters just adore him to death, she said. When they're feeling really bad, he's the one who can make them calm down and go to sleep. You have no idea how many times I've called for him to come over and work his magic. I made a mental note to get a couple of bar stools. Mandy backed the service truck into the store her husband owned. The shepherd's pie got great feedback from everyone. Even older Mandy liked it because she put it all over her face. Which meant it was on me too, because she sat on my knee. Carrie seemed to be focused on me and my niece. We were all served a dessert made new by the chef. I laughed as Carrie finished her first glass. She reached over to take a sip from mine. When she tasted it, she was surprised that it was only ginger ale. You're being naughty, she whispered. I laughed, then whispered in her ear. I made a promise to myself that I would never drink alcoholic drinks in this bar before I opened it. And so far I've kept it. I don't know what I said, but tears came to her eyes and she looked very proud. My assistant informed me that as of 6 p.m., when the shift changed, sales at the bar were up 16% and food sales were over 1,000 for the first time. When the ticket arrived, I pulled out my debit card to pay for it, handing the little girl to Lynn Carey. Susan asked why I was doing this. Even though I own the business, it's still a business, I said. I want my employees to be honest, so I have to be honest too. By paying my bill like every other customer does, I'm letting them know I won't tolerate it if they leave and don't pay theirs. A lot of people don't think so, Carrie said, but if you think about it, it makes sense. When the server brought the papers, I added 20% as a tip and put the card back in my wallet. After saying goodbye, Susan and Carrie drove me back to the house. It was time to check on the outcome of the party on Saturday night. When I opened my email, I realized that what Carrie Ann had told me was true. A bartender from New City Jack sent me a 2-hour video of the events of the night. It was professionally shot from various angles. The video was called Surviving University Night and started with Melody Corbett and Payne Richards. The show is strictly for 2 players. Opening the second and third files, I found copies of the contracts that both had signed, and their signatures were legally witnessed. It was now for sale on a paid adult site. The note said, "This will give you the tools to negotiate in a divorce. I went that route because the movie sells overseas and generates revenue every time it's shown, and I figured with your attitude you wouldn't mind. I didn't mind, and he was right. Melody will make sure her parents never see it. I texted Carrie to let her know you got it right. Surviving University Night, the video of Melody and Payne has now been posted on a paid adult website. I was disappointed at the lack of response until a while later when I heard a knock on the door. I had just finished showering and put on my pajamas. I opened the door half naked and wearing sandals. It was Carrie, and she was smiling broadly, but it wasn't Carrie, if you know what I mean. In less than 2 hours, she had lost at least 20 pounds from the bottom of her chest down. Come to think of it, she used to be a 10. Now she had to be a teenage 5. Wow, was all I could say as I was in complete shock. Who are you, and what have you done to my Carrie Ann? You like it, Carrie replied. I've gotten rid of my body shapes for good. There are a few things I need to explain, and your message allows me to do that. We have been investigating Richard's Dental Supply Corporation for over 2 years, said Carrie Ann. I work for the FDA as one of their investigators. They put me inside undercover, so I had to make sure I didn't look like the woman Payne was after. Why? What? Said I in utter confusion. All the materials they sell for false teeth and dentures are imported from China. We noticed that they were underpricing in the market, and we had to find out why. To do that, we needed to get inside to do a forensic audit, Carrie Ann explained. It took us so long because they used 3 different companies to hide the sources of the materials. Their search took the longest. Richards has been selling contaminated materials to unknown consumers for over a decade while making obscene profits. Most people who have bought plates made from his materials have lead in their mouths at all times. Payne has a long history of stalking married women. I'm afraid Melody is his next victim. One day she'll wake up and realize he never loved her. She was just a whore he could use for his pleasure. Then I came into your life, I said, and distracted you. So Susan's an agent too? Yes, that's her. I met her in my first year of university. We were both majoring in accounting, Carrie said. Before we go any further, I need you to get the video and any other information to my agent friend at the FBI. The bartender at New City Jack's was doing the same thing Melody and Payne did with the others. He is hoping that your information will help him make the connection that will bring this whole gang down. We sent it together. I poured her a glass of white wine and got a cold beer for myself. We were just talking when her cell phone rang. She said it was my mom. I asked if she wanted privacy, and she said no. I was surprised by her answer as I put it on speakerphone. Hi, Mom, I see you finally got my message, Carrie said, smiling. Did you seriously write that you were leaving the FDA? Her mom asked. Yes, Susan and I will be done here at the end of the week, but we'll work until we're fully settled, Carrie explained. We'll have to come back to testify, but we'll stay in town and start our own firm. Susan is moving in with me to cut costs until we get established. For 6 years, we've been pushing for you to settle down and stay in one place. Why now? Asked Karis's mom. Why did you decide to settle near home? Okay, Mom, Carrie laughed. You won't stop until I tell you. I met a man who interested me enough to make me wonder if he could be the one. Is this the same Caleb you're talking about? Asked Karis's mother. Mom, that's enough. Goodbye, said Carrie and hung up the phone. Don't feel bad. Once the last child leaves home, all mothers start wanting grandchildren to fill the void that has been created in their lives, I said. I have an appointment with a divorce lawyer tomorrow. Susan and I are quitting Richards tomorrow. The Food and Drug Administration is coming on Wednesday with warrants and seizure orders. They want us both gone before that happens. That way they can claim they got the information legally, even though they already know where to look. Carrie finally left around 1 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday, I got the insurance company to pay for the rental car, and then I went to the lawyers to start the process of filing for divorce. I was the first one at her place that day. She asked what proof I had, and I told her the whole story. She asked me to call my father-in-law, who agreed to come and testify. I let her listen to the entire conversation. In addition to the printouts from the Ramada Inn, that would be an added plus. If she agrees to what I'm proposing for settlement, request that she and her attorney meet with us so we can show her what is on that stick. It depicts what was created last Saturday night with their consent, I said. I even passed on the email that this was done. What makes you so sure she won't fight you after seeing this? My feminist liar asked. Take the stick home and watch a 2-hour movie alone. I keep the business, she gets the house. No support or anything, I said. And if she refuses? She asked. Then all family members on both sides will each get a copy of what I just handed you from an unknown email address, I said, getting up to leave. Caleb, she said, can you always be so dirty and stiff and cold? Only when a person's behavior leaves me no choice, I replied. Come to think of it, she was the one who made me realize that the last 12 years of my life had been mostly wasted. This moment struck my attorney as if she had just been stabbed with a sharp knife. Carrie and Susan actually went to their employer's office to quit. Melody, as office manager, was shocked. They were leaving at the end of the day. Filling their vacancies would be a challenge. Payne was on the spot, but he was in a lot of pain. No one would say what happened, but his right hand was in a cast from wrist to first knuckles. Payne spent most of the day in his office dealing with phone calls from corporate headquarters. He knew that the only reason he was still working was because he was family. He was given a small reprieve when he agreed to pay the cost of 2 company cars out of his own personal pocket. It was made clear to him that he had to either marry the girl or fire her. He agreed to the latter when her divorce was finalized. After quitting my lawyers, I went to a real estate broker I knew. I wanted to find out what office buildings were for sale in the area. One of them, he thought, could be a gold mine if the new owner could find a respectable anchor. It was only 5 blocks to downtown from the Baicha store on Bedia. It was now owned by the bank I was dealing with. He said he thought the bank was getting tired of wearing it. With a little facelift, interior painting, and landscaping, the 3-story building could be cleaned up quickly and attract attention. After looking him over, I agreed. We went back to his office and wrote up a proposal with a low price contingent on getting financing and inspection approval. I asked him if I could show the potential client a space that I thought would be perfect for him. He gave me the keys and told me to bring it in tomorrow. Around 2 in the afternoon, I texted Carrie, "Could you and Susan swing by the bar? I need to show you both something." She quickly replied, "Sure." I called my father-in-law and asked if he had an hour or 2 to spare. He asked me why. I explained that I was afraid I had to sell the bar to settle the divorce case and needed to start getting ready for a fresh start. I had an office building I was considering, and I wanted his opinion. He agreed, and I picked him up. We walked through the building, checking out the electrical. He pointed out a few things that the building inspector wouldn't notice, but could be used as bargaining chips. He asked what they were asking for. I told him and then disclosed what I was offering. "Smart move," he said. "You can always go up, but you can't go down. Personally, I think you should go for it. You need a couple new anchors. Do you have someone in mind?" I said, "Just 2 ladies who are starting their own accounting firm, which is now working with Melody and me, since I may be forced to sell Basia." He smiled and said, "If you get it, I'll help you remodel the space so it's open to both of you. It's bigger than your current place. Plenty of room for parking. Mandy tells me you're friends with them. She thinks they're good people." "Thanks, Dad," I said. "Do you really think Melody will claim your business in the divorce?" my father-in-law asked. "The Melody I used to know probably won't, but the one I'm divorcing probably will," I replied. "She'll blame me for everything that happens in her life to justify her actions." Dad looked at me in shock. "But that's not true. That's not what you and I know." I replied, "Name one situation, other than a legal contract, where the truth would matter in making a decision." "I can't, and neither can you. In divorce courts, it all depends on what you can get the judge to believe. If Melody and I had children, I'd be a dead man in the eyes of any judge." "But it's wrong," he said. "Dad, we agree with you, but we're in the minority. We still believe in right and wrong. These days, most outside the family only care about themselves. The times when society was beneficial as a whole are forever gone," I replied. "The proof of that is to look at how many people are homeless in the promised land of California. What is real for most people is what the media puts in front of them on that particular day, and it lasts about as long." I was back at the bar in my office when my realtor friend called to let me know that they had accepted the offer, but would not finance it even though I was a good client. I started looking for financing through LendingTree.com. I sent them my tax returns for the last 5 years to demonstrate that I was serious. Susan, Carrie, and I walked through the empty first floor of the building I wanted to buy. It had last been used as a call center. I told them about the plans for the new bar and restaurant I had in mind, and then asked how much office space they would need. Caleb, we can't afford what it would cost to finish. That's why we're looking at something that's move-in ready, Susan said. I decided even then that I would cover the costs out of pocket and build as the bar is established. I'll know if I have financing by Friday. I'll get the building for much cheaper than its appraised value. I said, Melody's dad will help with the construction, so that will cut down on a lot of the costs. Why are you doing this? Carrie asked. Because the court may force me to sell Baitia on Baitia as part of the divorce settlement, so I'm planning accordingly, I answered honestly. So in the next couple days, draw your needs for the next 2 years on paper. I'll work from there. What if you don't have to sell the bar? Asked Susan. My assistant got a promotion and I have 2 surgeries, I said. Wednesday was a bad day for Payne, Melody, and his parents. The Food and Drug Administration showed up, visiting all of their regional offices and headquarters en masse. Melody was handed a copy of my divorce petition on the grounds of adultery. On Friday, Melody and Payne flew out to Richard's headquarters. The deal was finalized on Friday, and I was able to squeeze out another $250,000 for remodeling. We started the interior remodeling. On the first floor, we tore down and stripped everything down to concrete walls and bare bones. Thanks to the concrete floors and steel framing, it didn't take long. During this time, our draftsman drew up detailed interior plans for the entire building. He redesigned the main entrance to include an elevator shaft for 3 floors. Contractors came in to run new plumbing for my section and Carrie and Susan's office, making 2 main entrances, one from the street and one from the main lobby. I had to cut and remove concrete so that a new elevator shaft could be installed and poured. At the same time, I built an interior concrete wall to provide permanent separation. Carrie and Susan would fly to Washington every Sunday night and return Friday night. They would stay until I finished work. I would pick them up and take them to the airport. Both helped out as much as they could. My soon-to-be ex's lawyer and my lawyer went nowhere. Every week her demands changed, and finally I said enough was enough and set up a meeting between the 4 of us. I was ready and angry enough to go for blood. After the elevator shaft was finished, I sandblasted the building. This removed the paint and returned the building to its original color, as well as refreshing the red brick to look like new. The crew remodeled the flat roof, bringing it up to modern standards. Finally, the interiors could be tackled. Her office would have men's and women's restrooms, a staff lunchroom, a beautiful reception area, and 6 offices. On my side would be public restrooms, a storage room behind the kitchen and bar, a suitable elevated area for the band with a nice dance floor. Contractors came in to do the interior. They did her part in less than 2 weeks. 2 more office buildings were purchased in the neighborhood. 2 buildings were sold and turned into the newest Bank of America branch. The local paper said that redevelopment was coming to a neighborhood that was more than ready for it. My meeting with my ex and her lawyer was scheduled for Friday. The kitchen equipment was delivered and set up on the white tile floor. The oak bar counter was built and dark pine laminate flooring was installed. All the electrics were ready and working on both sides. The tables and chairs and booths for the restaurant have been ordered and will be delivered on Monday. We did it all in less than 2 full months. My real estate agent found me a long-term tenant. The legal team occupied the entire 2nd and 3rd floors. It turned out that they covered the mortgage, taxes, and all the associated costs. I showed up for a meeting with my attorney and found that Melody was starting to show herself. She wanted me to step up and take on the responsibility of being a father. I listened to her claims and laughed when she claimed she was still on the pill when it happened. I told her we would do a DNA test to prove or disprove your claim. I then asked my attorney to show her what was on the stick I gave her. Melody's face turned white. Last time I looked, it had over 2 million hits, each one costing $5.99 a pop. I said, according to your contract, you are entitled to 5%. Since we were legally married at that point, all of the proceeds you receive for this one-night adventure must belong to me equally because it must also be listed as a marital asset. Now I'm going to give you the weekend to offer me a serious agreement that will suit us both. I said, otherwise everything I have on this disc will be made public on Tuesday. The silence in the room was murderous. Melody, We both know who the father of your child is, and his name is Payne, I said, getting up to walk out the door. You made your choice, accept the consequences, and live with them. 10 minutes passed before my divorce lawyer called. Caleb, she's offering you $350,000. You get to keep your business and your house. You must agree to never divulge or discuss what you know and give up all your rights to the movie. Draw up a settlement agreement, but stipulate that before I sign it, you must keep the funds for me, I replied. How soon will the divorce be finalized? I'll set a court date right now, but it will be legal 30 days after the judge signs off. I was dressed to the hilt and waiting for Carrie and Susan as they disembarked from the small regional jet. My hands were busy because I was holding 2 sets of roses. Red ones for Carrie, yellow ones for Susan. As she walked through the gate, Carrie saw me and broke out into a huge smile. As soon as they approached me, I handed them each a check. Both of them had to kiss my check. We got their luggage and I pulled them towards the new sedan I finally bought, having gotten a cash settlement I could live with. Before we take you home, I want to stop by and show you your finished offices. I think you should know that the rest of the building is rented by a group of lawyers, I said. Carrie and I have reached a financial agreement on the property left over from my marriage, which will be approved by the court next week. How much did you lose? Asked Carrie. Is it as bad as we feared? Oh yeah, too bad, I laughed. We had a meeting with our lawyers and I got her video and a printout of how much she earned. I said that since one side was forcing us to agree to count all property as marital property, her earnings from the one-night stand video should be counted too. Since it was taken while we were married, 50% of the income owed to her should belong to me as well. Carrie cried with relief. Now we can officially date. As a result of this and the threat I made at the end of the day, I get to keep my business, my house, and get $350,000 on top of that, I explained. She has a week to move whatever furniture she wants out of the house. What do you plan to do with the house? Carrie asked. I'm going to sell it because I don't think the woman I fell in love with would want past memories to get in her way. Tears of joy ran down Carrie's cheek. Caleb, you're still as slow as molasses in January. It took you over 2 months to say what I knew the night we met Mandy and her family, stated Susan. But when you do it right. Even Susan, usually more reserved, cried when she saw that their finished offices were now approved for use. The use of oak and pastel colors made the space warm and very professional. All that's left is to name the business and register it and buy the office equipment and furniture, I said with a smile. You ladies picked the colors well. Caleb Corbett, Carrie said, jumping into my arms. I love you. Damn it, you made me wait so long before you told me you felt the same way. No more holding back. Good. I just nodded my head and kissed her. Eventually, we took Susan to Carrie's house where they both now lived. It was the first time Carrie had traveled home with me. We spent a few hours catching up and fully opening up to each other. We went to breakfast at our favorite deli. Then I took her to Gerard's to see the rings. From cheap to the most expensive, she saw one she really liked but stepped back when she saw the price. I asked the salesman to bring it out so she could try it out. I went and brought it back. Carrie put it on her finger. It fit. While she admired it, I handed the clerk my debit card. Carrie said, Enough is enough. It's too much for a thing I'll only be wearing for a few months. You can put it in your jewelry box and give it to our oldest daughter when she turns 16, I replied in a firm voice. Even the seller had tears in her eyes as she processed the sale. Of course, the first person she called was Susan. We arranged to meet at the Baisha restaurant on Baisha at 6 o'clock. I told her that she should invite her mother and father to join us. She did so. They wanted to meet the man who had finally convinced their free souls to come home. I called Daniel my former father-in-law and his wife. Yes, I always called them Mom and Dad. To invite them over. Both said they would love to come. I informed them that Melody and I had come to an agreement and that the divorce would be decided next week. I found out that Payne and Melody announced their engagement in a text message a week ago because they still hadn't spoken. I contacted Mandy and asked her to bring the whole family. I called my chef and asked if he could cook something special and explained why. He said he would make a traditional Irish thick lamb stew with fresh cedar cookies, and he would add his own twist to each dish. He asked the bartender to serve Irish coffee with plenty of fresh cream for everyone but me. Unexpectedly, he ordered a private table at the back of the restaurant so we could have some privacy. Daniel and Mary, my in-laws, showed up first. This allowed me to introduce Carrie to them first. The biggest surprise was for Carrie and me. Her parents, Bob and Roseanne Lasher, were well-known relatives. Daniel seemed to keep them in the loop on all the details when they were at work. When Jack and Mandy showed up, the little ones immediately rushed to me. At their ages of 4 and 3, they hugged me tightly. I leaned over and took them both in my arms. Carrie held out her arms and the younger ones went to her. Over a huge dinner, we informed everyone that Carrie had gotten her ring. Everyone was shocked at its size. When Carrie explained how it happened and my response, her mother tried not to cry but couldn't. Even the relatives gave us their approval. They were confused when Carrie told them it was okay if I called you Mom and Dad. Cale made it clear that you would always be Mom and Dad to him. As usual, the food was exceptional. When the ticket was brought to me, Carrie's father snatched it and said that this ticket was on me. I wanted to say something, but I felt a foot kick me in the shin and I didn't. After everyone left except her parents, we told them our whole story down to the smallest detail. I want to ask you, Cale, if you don't mind, we've all had Irish coffee more than once except you. Don't you drink any? Asked Bob. I laughed. Carrie smiled. Papa Cale doesn't drink in any establishment he owns. Never has and never will. That's a promise he made before he even built this establishment, explained Carrie. It's his way of keeping himself in check and setting an example for his employees. So this is a bit of a high-class establishment of yours, isn't it? He said with a laugh and a smirk, then added, I think it's the only establishment I think is good enough for my daughter, my friend. We brought them in so they could see the layout and design of her new office, and it gave us a chance to talk while the woman took the royal tour. He was impressed with the quality of the work, the overall design, and the colors. As a father, I could tell he was very proud. Daniel sees you as the son he never had. Says you are a man who stands up for his principles better than ever, said Karis's father. Off the record, Daniel is the father I never had. I grew up in a poor home without a father. He left before they were even married. My mother couldn't have a relationship with another man, so she raised me and my sister alone, I said. It was through Melody that I met him. He was as tough and hard as I was, street smart and libidinous, but he never backed down. Daniel always stood his ground when necessary. I learned a lot from him, like the fact that a real man is strong. In every way, he is my father, not by inheritance, but by choice. The moral principles and standards I carry within me came about because of him. I can honestly and proudly say that I became who I am because of him. We stood like that until the ladies returned, and then Carrie's father spoke. Carrie, the only thing your mother and I can say based on what we have been told and what we have learned. We approve of your choice and would be honored to consider him our son, he said. So welcome to Caleb's family. He held out his hand and I shook it. Carrie told me later that she was in complete shock because her father had never approved of anyone else before. We spent the night together. It was sad to see her go back. Both Susan and Carrie wanted to leave the FDA on good terms. I put the house on the market on Monday. Wednesday, I signed the divorce agreement and received the money she held in trust. On Friday, I sat in court and watched the judge rule on my divorce. Melody never bothered to show up. I picked up my assistant from Bythia's on Bythia and took him to the new bar. He loved the layout and the kitchen. The city council had given us all the permits we needed. It was a sports bar taken to the extreme. All that was left was to give it a name. Charlie, you've been with me from the beginning. Would you agree to leave Basia and run this place as general manager? I asked. Yes, of course I will, he replied gleefully. $75,000 a year. I said, with a 10% bonus each year based on net income. Charlie was overwhelmed. He'd just gotten the biggest pay raise of his life. If he plays it right, he saw how much I believed in him. What are we going to call him? He asked. Charlie's Bar and Grill. 3 years after the divorce, the accounting firm of Corbett and Sullivan was a huge success. Charlie's Bar and Grill has become a local treasure. Melody and Payne head to divorce court, where she catches him with her best friend. Her family still wants nothing to do with them. I had just experienced the worst day of my life. I didn't realize my wife Carrie had so many names for me. Every time she experienced another severe labor pain, I would get a new name. The twins were born within 20 minutes of each other. First a girl was born, then a boy. Both had Carrie's fiery red hair. Both relatives were in Carrie's room when we announced their names. Daniel Robert and Rosemary Ann. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.